Alright, I guess we're back with another one. It's the extra is too powerful. What is that? Well, I believe it's a manhwa. Um, might be mistaken, but I'm fairly certain. Um, I guess before we get into anything, I'd appreciate it if you could like, comment, subscribe, all that other YouTube blah blah blah, horseradish, blah blah blah. And yeah, I don't know. We're getting into it now. If you haven't seen any of my other ones, well, that's mean. But what do I normally do? Well, I give you a rating up front without any information, and then I go into why I gave it that rating. So if you just want to go off the rating and that's it, then you can move on. For this one, I'm gonna give it a 6. All right. All right. Now on to the actual reasoning. Well, some things that I have to say right off the rip. It is a generic, tropey story with some elements that are very entertaining. I have to say, for this, I read, I believe, 58 chapters. And here's what I'll say. I think the beginning is very, very bad. I think it is going to instantly make people think, like, I don't think I want to read this. It has all the generic with nothing, even remotely unique, and I would say the story is even written poorly. The only thing going for it at the beginning is the fact that its art is decent, and, you know, the combat is a little bit entertaining, but it is rough. So, I think a lot of people would probably just stop before they even reach 10 chapters. But, you know, for the sake of a review, I want to give it, you know, a fair shot. And I mean, in certain cases, you know, 10 chapters isn't even an episode, depending on what you're looking at. So I feel like, you know, if you were reviewing an anime, you'd want to at least watch, like, the first episode. Probably, you know, the entire season. So I took that in mind. And after reading 58 chapters, which was, you know, what I had access to, it still wasn't good. But it's almost entertainingly bad. Like, the fights are relatively just fun. Some of the things that happen are just so nonsensical that it's almost fun to think about. Like, what the hell? Like, how does that make any sense? It's... I don't know why, but just some part of it was entertaining, even though, like, objectively, I know it's not good. Now, why I gave it a 6? Well, I mean, the art's good, at least, which I think gives it a little bit of credit. And I don't necessarily think that, like, every aspect of the story is bad. I mean, I think it's fine in its tropes at times. So I think, like, I don't know, I don't want to go with saying it's bad. And I think, like, there is just like, a little bit of a fun element to it, where it's just kind of like point A, point B storytelling. Now, I mean, some things about the series, well, I mean, I guess I'll get into, like, the general idea, like, what happens. Well, start of the story, it is an isekai, of course, because I have to cover a million isekais a year, at least. So, this is the main guy before he gets reincarnated. He just injured himself. He's I don't know if they expressly said it, but I believe he's paralyzed from the legs, you know, waist down, basically. And the one hope he has, and the one, like, light in his life is just reading happy stories, like stories that have happy endings, because it makes him feel better. Which, I mean, you know, it's grim, but I get that, right? Like, reading or watching, like, a happy thing is something that kind of makes you feel a little better. But the one he's currently reading, he gets to the ending, and it's a super dark ending. It's terrible. The whole world dies, and it's awful. So he starts to lose all hope. Then we see him get reincarnated as this guy, who in the original story is, who would have guessed, an extra, who it turns out in the original story was also very powerful. He just wasn't necessarily that prominent. Super basic start to a story, right? A lot of isekais have this, the main character is some sort of hospital patient, depressed, gets reincarnated in another world, and has like a second chance. I'll admit I kind of like, how the main character talks in the beginning. It's like, oh, I have, like, my only goal is to make this a happy ending. Like, he wants this world to be a happy ending, which I kind of like. It's simple, but it's like, it's one of those things where it's like simple but like sweet and enjoyable just to tag along. I like that. Now, it's really tropey. Like, there's like the mentor type, blind old man, super powerful, things like that, right? Super generic. And I don't necessarily hate when things are generic, but like everything is generic, which gets difficult to read at times. I don't necessarily, again, like, I don't hate this generic aspect. It's just, when you have so much with nothing else to give, it's just like, also, like, the power systems are super generic. It's not, like, fun. The world building is just weird. Like, there are, I kid you not, there are like a million organizations in this world. It's like, oh yeah, every time he goes to a new place, there's another secret organization. Like, the storytelling, like, the author only knows how to make secret organizations that he just beats up. And he never finishes them off or anything. He just beats up like one guy and then leaves it and then has to come back and deal with it later. And basically, it's just him going around the world rotating which organization he's beating up that day. Or raiding a dungeon or something. And all it is people coming to him, he has to beat them up, and then he goes to the next place. It does not go anywhere, I'm gonna be perfectly honest. It is one of those things where, like, if you need a time waster, it's not that bad. Like, it gets you, it is a time waster story where it's just like, the fights are kind of fun to watch, and I can just blitz through chapters because there's basically no story. It does, but it mixes every generic trope. Like, he's like an illegitimate son of a house. This is like one of his sisters that's trying to, become the next Archduke, but the Archduke's a bad guy. Oh, what a shocker. That's not even a spoiler. I mean, every Archduke is a bad guy if it's an old man. And it's just, it literally wants to hit every trope. Like, oh, you have like, oh, muscular woman, oh, trope. Oh, silver hair, oh, man. Muscular main lead, oh my god, that's so cool. Old man, whatever. It hits every trope. The main character's super boring. After, going to the new world, he basically never takes this image, like this expression off. He's just constant stoicism, like, for the rest of his life. And I mean, he's not even really that interesting. I follow the story, like what happens in the game or the book, and that's all I do. And I just go around looking for things that the main character looked for because I think he's bad. And it's just like, okay. Like, as far as like characters go, I mean, there's really, I genuinely mean this, nothing. This character's personality is exactly how it looks. You could look at this character's face and know exactly what their personality is. Again, he's always like this. Literally nothing. You could literally put a board in place of this character and it would be the exact same. I think, like, again, the only things that are keeping it going would just be like decent art, and then like the fights are somewhat interesting to watch. But even then, like the fights, they're only visually appealing. They're not. There's no depth to these fights. They're just visually appealing. I think again, most people will probably deck out at around 6 chapters in because it does not add anything. I will say, this character, I just really like him. I don't know why. I made it past like, you know, the early stages and then this guy shows up and I'm like, he's actually just likable. I don't know why. Like, I would rather the story just be about that guy. It'd probably be a better story. He uses magic and whatever. But yeah, I mean, there's no depth. No depth. It's a fine, you know, time waster, but nothing deeper. This character's boring, generic, mildly interesting. And like, this guy can't carry an entire story, right? It just doesn't happen that way. I mean, overall, what is there to say? Well, it's a decent story, like, if you want to waste your time, but if you want, you know, something that's like actually going to be like, oh, this is my new favorite or something. No, this isn't it. it you know, it has that time waster quality of like art and everything, but it has nothing more, no substance, doesn't go any deeper. Around every corner there's a new trope or a new organization for him to fight. All of them want to do like the same thing basically, and there's like a million of them. The power systems are super jank, like this guy just gets more powerful every 5 minutes. And like every other character is just like, oh, like now this is the new norm. Like every time he goes up a tier, the average goes up for some reason, and then you just end up like never getting anywhere. Also, like, they often say, like, oh, there's, like, you know, masters are so rare, then boom, there's a million masters, right? Like, it just, it is the worst power scaling ever. It's basically like if they said nothing. Like, you could have just said nothing and it would have done the same thing. And I think there are, like, speckles of interesting things periodically, like a big topic in the series is like the blood of the gods that he has and like his siblings and things like that. And there's some interest there, like, oh, like how does the blood work? Why are some people different than others in terms of like dilution and things like that? Like what are the full powers of it? You know, like the god that left the, you know, the world, like what is his story? Things like that. Like there are interesting things outside of the main character, but they're not really touched on, and when they are touched on, it's not very well done. So it's just like speckles of something, like speckles of something good mixed in with, you know, shit. I actually think it started to get a little better after like the early parts. Like I would say like early part was like the other part was super rough. But it does get a little better later on. Like I'm not gonna lie, like I enjoyed it more, but it was more so like, again, it's not any deep level of enjoyment. It's just like this is good art with like some entertaining ideas. But they throw in a million villains. None of them matter because they never flesh them out. And then, like, all they do is just move on to the next thing repeatedly, over and over and over again. The main character has no personality, and really the only character I like is this guy. So, yeah, I think I'm going to stick with either a 6 or a 5. I wouldn't go below, like, a 5, because it's not... I really don't think it's... As a whole package, I don't think it's bad. I just... I don't know. It's just like the story. It doesn't do anything unique. Doesn't do anything different. It's just boring. I think it's much more reasonable to say it's boring. Like I don't think this series is going to piss anybody off. It's just going to make you bored forever. Yeah. I mean that's the real shame of it. It's not that it's good, bad, whatever. Like if something is good or bad, at least it's not boring, right? Like, at least if it's good or bad, you have some reason to read it. Either it's so bad you just want to see what happens, right? You just want to see the crash, or it's so good that it's not worth, like, you know, it's worth the read. This is just boring. Like I said, if you literally want to waste your time, then sure. If you have nothing else to read, okay. And, but otherwise I just really wouldn't. And I mean, who knows, maybe later on down the line, it'll be better. I don't know. But it's not there yet, and I read 58 chapters to make this video, so I don't know when it's gonna get there. You know, maybe in a couple years I'll go back and pick up where I left off, and it'll be 20 times better than right now, but as of right now, 5 or 6. But, yeah, that's all I have to say, really. You know, like, comment, subscribe, let me know if there's any other series you want me to cover, and, yeah. I'll see ya.